Nerds International proudly presents
Downtown Chicago. I'm sitting in this crummy bar and this broad walks up and she says, "This is bonus content, and it will not affect the scheduling of your usual 3T RPG broadcasts." Welcome to this bonus episode of the 3T RPG podcast. This is going to be a little follow-up to our episode on the Satanic Panic. Essentially, we talked a lot on that episode about Satanism in RPGs. Was there any actual merit to that kind of stuff? And we kind of spoke about if there is an actual link in there. And I spoke a little bit about the fact that there may be kind of an accidental link by Gary Gygax, because maybe, just maybe, he's an accidental demon. And so with me to talk today about that particular thing, we've got Nick Lamley.
Hello, how you doing?
James Clark.
Everybody. Hello.
And we've got a very, very special guest today. He is a Lutheran minister, an actual pastor, and not the delicious kind. It is Conrad Erasmus Neubert. Am I saying that right, Neubert?
Yes, it's perfect, actually. Yes, Neubert.
We've been saying it for years. It's good to know we've been saying it correctly.
Yes.
So, Conrad, you're a long-time listener to the show.
Oh, yes, and when I first found it, I binge-watched it, and it's not watching, it's listening, right? It's not the first time I actually see your faces all together, yes.
I just want to say I'm so sorry.
To it.
Yeah,
no, you're all terribly handsome.
That's a damn lie.
Yes, I like the beard.
Thanks.
Yes.
Not on my face, obviously.
No. And yes, I love your style. I love your the stuff you talk about. Yes, I love it.
See, this is why we brought Conrad on, is just to blow our trumpets. That's the only reason. It's not to actually talk about anything worthwhile. It's just so that he can say that we're good. But anyway, yeah, we wanted to kind of talk about essentially a kind of religious Christian perspective on RPGs as well, because if anything, we wanted to have some kind of a balance on this, because Conrad, you played RPGs for a very long time. Give us kind of your background on RPGs. How did you get into it, and what were your favorite ones?
I started in 2005, I believe, with D&D 3.5. So that's not that long ago compared to other people of the community, but yes, to me it's a long time ago. And I ran and played D&D 3.5 for a long time. It never felt like it was the thing that I really wanted.
I'm sure a lot of people share that same perspective on D&D 3.5.
Yes, and also I gravitated to characters that really didn't reward my choices, like bards and flavored as priests and stuff like that. But yeah, so bards were horrible in 3.5. Then I played some The Dark Eye. That's really popular in Germany. Das Schwarze Auge. It's really funny because it literally translates to the black eye, and they changed it for the English version with and with different groups, but never long enough to actually get into one specific edition of that game to actually know the system well. It's a bit simulationist, so that I played it because other people played it, and I never ran it. Mm-hmm. My brother introduced me to some more narrative RPGs, even Savage Worlds, a few years ago, but I didn't really get it. And so I started playing D&D 4, and that was a huge disappointment, yes. I even played a little bit of 3.5 again, just to not play 4 anymore. And then I played Deadlands Classic for a while. And you have actually, there's a German translation of the core rules over here. And that was a lot of fun. But it was a lot to explain to new players. And yeah. Then through Deadlands Classic, I found my way back to Savage Worlds. And now I run the occasional Savage Worlds one-shot. I'm finishing up a Deadlands campaign. I play in my brother's online Rippers campaign. And and I'm jamming a Buffy the Vampire Slayer homebrew game for my wife.
Nice. Oh, that's cool. That's a lot of gaming for...
Yeah.
It's like 13 years.
yeah, it's well spaced out sometimes. Yeah. Oh, and GM for my older son, who's 5 years old now, and that's like a homebrew system that is inspired by other kids' RPGs, but he can't really add up numbers very well yet. So, yeah.
You got to kick him out then.
Yeah.
He's got to go. He's got to go.
Okay, then I'll jam for my 1-year-old son. And
There's only one way that's going to go.
Yes.
Kick him out too.
I thought something because it's actually relevant. I did play some bibliodrama, and that's kind of an RPG. Not really, but it's a form of role-playing with scripture. And you take biblical stories and then you embody people from these stories and from these texts, and sometimes make up new people appearing in these texts. And
is that good?
Kind of like it sounds like a sort of LARPing sort of session almost.
Almost. It's actually more similar to like improv theater.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's like very free form. And there usually is like a GM, but it's also way more intense. The sessions are like 10 minutes, maybe 15, and then you have like a long period afterwards where you talk about it and exchange experiences. I didn't do it a lot. I think I want to do it more. It's complicated to play biblical RPGs, and that's something that gets close to it that I am somewhat comfortable with. Yes.
So have you heard of Testament?
Yeah, I heard you.
Because that was actually that was compatible with D&D 3.5. So if you ever fancied playing something, I don't know if it actually plays anything close to what was actually supposed to be in the Old Testament.
It seemed decent though.
In terms of actually like something worth playing, the character classes and stuff seem well good, and the monsters I remember them being wicked. But like I don't know if it's actually close to what was in the Bible. It might be terrible. But yeah, who knows?
There are not that many monsters in the Bible actually, so it's probably quite an empty world. But
there you go. So, yeah, I'm sure it was like way off the mark. But anyway, getting back onto the subject at hand. Essentially, one of the things that we, I guess listeners should go back and listen to the Satanic Panic episode, because a couple of the things that we spoke about was that they're essentially, most people decry the whole Satanic Panic thing. So a lot of people kind of something getting out of hand, and people saying, okay, here's this thing like where people just didn't understand the hobby and saw it as something that was like demonic when in fact it isn't. And during that episode, I kind of came up with a few things that I think may be linked to like sort of the kind of popular Satanism things at the time that I believe may have been an accidental link that Gary Gygax came up with, and that there were certain elements of RPGs, or specifically D&D and fantasy role-playing games, that might be, I suppose, without being offensive, inherently unchristian in some certain ways. I guess that's the best way to put it. And I don't want to offend in any way, but I suppose the reason that we kind of had you on here is because you then sent me a message saying that you believe that RPGs and maybe D&D to an extent were a very Christian thing in general. And the reason that we got you on here is kind of to speak about why you believe that, and why you think that the RPGs were an extremely Christian hobby to have, and speak about it from a religious perspective. Because aside from going to religious schools as kids, like pretty much most people in this country, England, by the way, listeners, we don't really have that perspective. And as a result, like, I thought it'd be interesting for you to talk about that. So, yeah, what do you mean when you say that RPGs are a kind of are a Christian thing?
There are a couple of terrific lessons I think every role player learns. And one actually goes to the core of why the Satanic Panic is like from its very root, like nonsense. And that's when you start playing the game, you from the moment on you sit down and create a character, you know that this is fictional and that you create it, and it's not something that not the world impacts you in the way you impact the world, and that fictional thing is really important because you learn as a player to differentiate between truth and reality in a new way. And almost every form of fiction teaches that, but RPGs in a bit more intense way, because you create fiction that you actually can live in your mind, and you can interact with, and that creates true experiences. You can be sad about a character dying. You can be happy about their achievements. And you can be grateful for what they have achieved, and if they can complete a character arc and they come out a different person, or achieve goals in life, or just make it out of life, you will have a true experience. But you know that this is not reality. So you have learned the first essential lesson of meaning. That meaning exists beyond what is real and what is tangible, and that's something really important to know, and that was forgotten or is forgotten by many people who think that there's a tangible world and then that's it. That every emotion is just a hormone, or every experience is just a complex constellation of brain chemicals and electrical signals. But the truth of an experience, apart from its reality, tangible reality, is like a first very important lesson for everyone, to be able to recognize that there are truths that are greater than visible reality.
That's very, very well put. I can see why you've got that job that you've got.
Yeah. Look at that. It's a little cheeky smile as well.
See, that's a mic drop moment right there.
There are plenty more merits to RPGs than just that for a Christian. I think RPGs are a great ethical exercise. Like, you get these condensed, dramatically exaggerated moments, encounters, challenges that help you explore the nature of conflict, or the nature of specific conflicts. And I actually find it great that in your actual plays, although it always seems like such a stark contrast of what is good right now and what is evil right now, there always is like a development into like a conversation, and there's like a multitude of perspectives that suddenly opens up. I remember when the Hobbit and the Dwarf go into the dungeon beneath that elf castle.
Oh, yeah, the Kingspire.
Yes, and they meet a torturer called Erasmus.
Oh, yeah, that was... I remember that, yeah.
Man.
Yes, but the most obvious thing is to try and kill him or run away, which the characters did for the first time. But then returning... it became necessary to interact, and there was actually conversation. I can't remember how it actually, how it ended, if they had to kill him or something.
Oh, no, they befriended him right up until the end, and it turned out that the guy hated his job, and that he was badly paid, and they didn't even give him, that his employers didn't give him decent torturing equipment, and as a result, he was really fed up and stuff like that.
Yeah, everything was
that's the whole antagonism of the situation dissolved into something completely new, and that's something that's like an ethical lesson that you don't easily get in a movie or something. It takes a lot of effort to learn from a movie or a book.
Yeah, I think that you're quite right. I think that often when you're in kind of like a movie or a book or any other medium, like you say, it does take effort to show scenes from different angles, and it's much easier in an RPG often, because the same as in like a real life situation, you get the chance to speak to people and to just ask, and in RPGs, it's really uncinematic. But if you meet a bad guy and you just go, what seriously, what's the problem? Why are you so upset? And they just go, well, it's the pay. I'm sick of this stuff. There's no benefits to doing this. Stand around in a dungeon and attack the adventurer's job. And it's I know that's a very silly example, but you're right. It does open up moral dilemmas and things like this. And I think that there's a guy that I'm friends with called Paris, and he uses RPGs to teach moral dilemmas and things like this to kids with autism, and it's like the kind of stuff they wouldn't have already thought about, but then when like presented with it. For example, one example he gave to us when we interviewed him on another podcast was that he was saying that often if there's like a city guard in their way, they'll just be like, well, I'll kill the guy, obviously. And he's like, well, you could do that, but remember, the rest of your party's going to be annoyed because they may not want to be pursued by the city guard and stuff like that. And again, that's a really simple example, but yeah, you're absolutely right. It does teach you morals because eventually, even if you just play an evil character and just kill and steal and burn your way to the end, you're going to end up. It's going to be hard. That is difficult because it's like, well, the city guards are going to be after you. Everyone's going to be upset with you. So yeah.
Like evil campaigns are like a whole different topic. It's really hard to play evil people in an RPG. And I think it comes like part of it is because of the like the most allure it has in D&D because there's like a label to it, the evil alignments. But it's also the most difficult thing to play in accordance with, and still cooperate and still make it a fun game and not something where you continually try to sabotage each other.
Well, we actually
I'd agree with that, definitely.
We actually reached out on MeWe and on Facebook and asked some of the listeners for questions to see if there was anything that they wanted to ask you. And one of our listeners, Kira Tarokio, sorry if I'm pronouncing your name wrong, she asked, related to this, Conrad, how do you feel about the various character alignments, particularly chaotic neutral and true neutral?
I think the alignments are limiting, and I don't know actually any person who thinks that way, that they are a force of. Well, okay, there are people that think that they are a force of chaos in their society or a force of order. Okay, I see that. So that has some merit. But the whole good and evil thing, I don't see the point of it because really everybody thinks that they have a right to be the way they are, or to judge the way they judge, to think the way they think, and that ethics are subjective, but not in a way that makes them invalid subjective, but subjective in a way that every person's ethics have to differ because everyone is at a different place in life. And so we can't all just do the same thing. To every person, good is something else, and this something else is very something specific and something concrete.
When you GM when you GM D&D, for example, in D&D there's a it says now pick an alignment for your character. So when you GM it, do you tell people don't worry about that part?
Yes, I did. And because there are spells that go back to that and reference that, and we need a healer, so you need a cleric. So you have someone who can detect evil or something like that. I had to put it back in, but then I made really general explanations about what would be evil, and it was uncomfortable. It didn't really fit in. And the neutral. What was the question about the neutral alignment?
They asked what you feel about chaotic neutral and true neutral alignments specifically.
I think it says something in there about like this is the most free alignment, free of not bound to serving order or chaos or good and evil, and like to a 16-year-old that might be interesting. But so I still think that this person, the 16-year-old, they probably think that everybody else thinks that something like the order the society has to be is good, but I don't think that, and I rebel against society. So I am chaotic, but which is somewhat plausible. But what is not plausible to say I'm neither good or bad in this. He thinks that in his choice to oppose other people's morals, he makes the right choice. And that makes it something good in my eyes.
That's a very good way of putting it. I mean, the thing is that it's like you said, a lot of people's moral compass is you ask most people out there on the streets today, go out there with a pen and paper and a clipboard, right, and say, do you think you're good? And everyone will go, yes.
Yeah, of course I am.
Or most people, actually, you know what? In England, most people would tell you it's a Foxtrot Oscar. They would just tell you. I'm trying not to swear.
But I don't want to buy it.
Yeah, that's what I say. They say no thanks. Or sorry, I donate to charity already. And it's like, no, I was trying to ask you about my D&D survey. But yeah,
it depends where you are. I'm sure there's a few people that will just outright tell you the truth and be like, nope, not good at all.
No, maybe in our town, James.
Right? Yes.
Yeah, it's just an awkward silence while you're standing there, and the guy that's just said it kind of just stares at you as if saying, "No, I'm very bad actually. Thanks for asking."
And then he shows you a gun on his hip.
Yeah, off we go.
But that's the other thing, right? Is it does, like, from a Christian perspective, does neglect the human condition of, like, everybody is a sinner, and everybody has this dual side to them, that they know that they have bad thoughts or aggressive behavior in them, like that there's a possibility, but like seldomly a reality, and that having these alignments forces a weird role play, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
And I would argue, like, your character generally, like, your characters can change what you'd class as an alignment, I suppose, just through, like, their experiences in a game. You know, if you start off as a character that's quite happy and whatever, and then by the end of it, if they've been through the mill, they could be quite an angry, vengeful person because of what situation they've been through. So they might naturally change an alignment, if you was to define it as an alignment anyway. Just through playing the game rather than just predetermining what it is before you even start.
I saw a pretty cool one the other day. It was like an alignment wheel, and it was all to do with different personality types as opposed to good and evil. And it was something like this, and I can't bloody remember, but I'll link it in the description. And it was way better.
Mm-hmm.
But it was more like all of these different personality types, and they all linked together. And it was like you can pick one, and then there'll be like another one 2 steps over, but you can't pick one more than 3 steps away. So it'll be like you're studious or something like this, and then there'll be one 2 steps away that's like you're also very meticulous or something like this. And it was more personality traits rather than alignments. And this
sounds like a pretty good idea.
Yeah, and that's why I prefer things like Savage Worlds, where it's like, you know, more personality traits rather than, because the thing is, you take any edges and hindrances, and that can be a good, a bad guy, whatever. But the point is that your character, more often than not in Savage, is going to believe they're good, because most people do. But anyway, we have some more questions for you, and there is a guy here called Dan Cook, and he says, as someone who is very religious in their real life, do you find that you bring more or less theology into a game while gaming?
More. I've read about people, I've met people that say that they don't like introducing their real faith, like the real Christianity, into the games, and I see why. But I like to I like to subvert the players' expectations a lot. I threw Deadlands campaign. I threw a preacher at the party who insisted that if you commit suicide and then let him resurrect you, that you'll be cured of the disease that one party member had. And they were they ate actually human flesh by accident, and then they got infected with Deadland's equivalent of zombie disease. So it was pressing, and so I was hoping, and it actually worked, that they were. I could see on their faces that they were questioning. Okay, now a minister gives us this out, but through a religious person, but it really sounds suspicious and probably won't work. And it obviously was a trap. And had she done it, she would have ended up an undead, like a different type of undead, but not not a zombie, but also not alive. So yes, I like to add theology to my games. Like from the beginning, I think my first D&D campaign was about hobgoblins believing that they had found the Messiah, and which was a human who had like led them to that conclusion, and then they started to conquer the empire for him and stuff like that. I do introduce a lot of religious themes and stuff into my games. I also think that cool. It feels more complete with it, like or to me at least.
Well, are the groups that you play with then, are a lot of them religious, like the actual people that attend and that? So a lot of the people that you game with, are they either part of, say, your church or anything like that, or are they just inherently just quite religious, the people that you play with?
I do play with a few parishioners. I played with family members who all are Christians, but like most games are in a more or less secular context. Like we have like a gaming shop, a gaming library in my town, and those people aren't Christians, And it works the best if I like throw them a religious curveball. It's fun.
That's cool.
So yes, Stefan Dragonspawn comes in, and I don't know if this is a good question or not, but I'm going to ask it anyway, so I apologise. He says, what do you think about having cleric/priest characters worshipping gods other than the Catholic one? Because I think this is kind of like one of the things that the Satanic Panic was all about, and as you say, kind of nonsense. A lot of those people in America and stuff had a problem with people worshipping non-Christian gods within a game. So Stefan asks, is it blasphemy or at the very least disrespectful, or just some innocent fun?
I'd say it's innocent fun. It's not blasphemy because everyone knows that it's fiction, right? Like if you have heard people talk about actual seances, conjuring actual, like in their minds, actual demons, or meeting actual deceased people, that is really different from an RPG experience. The praying to gods other than the Christian God is, I think there's some merit to that, because like especially the D&D gods, they are some type of really advanced character, and in some D&D campaigns I never did it, but you can fight them and take their places. And like D&D gods teach us something about the Christian God. If you're a religious person, you pray to God, and I think I as a Christian, if I would suddenly find myself in a D&D world, yes, I would have a hard time praying to these people, because they are very powerful. I might ask them for something, but it's a really different experience because they do not define the world like to me God does. To me, God defines what is death and what is life, and
well, in D&D and that, they're very opinionated, because although you say that you don't, you leave sort of alignments out of when you're doing it, the actual gods themselves, even if you left it out, they have their alignments, because that's their job, isn't it? So one is going to be inherently more evil than the other, or what have you, and that's how their characters are.
It's almost like whenever more often than not in D&D, in my experience anyway, when somebody worships a god, well, when a character does, I should say, it's more often not a side note on their character sheet. Do you know what I mean? and it doesn't, like you say, Conrad, define our society quite as much in the way that Christianity does, and people's beliefs in the way that they act. I've seen, unless people play like a really, really lawful good paladin, that's the only time. And even then, more often than not, it'll come up once every 15 minutes when they want to argue with another player character, that is. When another player character they want to argue with is doing something they don't want to do, and they'll just go, but, I don't know, Glorf does not permit this. And that's it. I couldn't think of any D&D gods.
Vecna, how about this one? He's actually an evil one. But there's actually something else, because I find it easier to roleplay a cleric praying to their made-up god than roleplaying a Christian believer praying to the same god I pray to. And I think the reason is that I know, and there's no question about it, that it's pretense when I do it to like in a role-playing context and praying to a made-up god. But if I choose words that sound like the words I actually say in prayer, then that natural distance between me and my character, that fades away, and I suddenly find myself, like, I slip into actually addressing actual God about something that comes from the game. Might not actually be something I want to pray about. So I do avoid that, at least.
Oh, that makes sense, yeah.
Yeah,
because you wouldn't want to, I suppose, if you're saying you're accidentally sort of blurring the lines in between, and you find yourself as a person, instead of a character, actually reaching out to God and just being like, oh, please help me find my path in this RPG or something like that.
Yeah, and then also it might become like almost like it's just like work, you know. Then you're just doing the same thing you do during the day.
Yes, escapism is a point. Like, is a lure.
Yeah, exactly. We've got another question here from Owen Lean, and he says, this kind of actually isn't RPG related, but I'd be interested to know your opinion on it nonetheless. He says, the Satanic Panic is a good example of how a very vocal minority of extremists can present an image that the rest of the world takes to represent the mainstream. What can be done to help remind the world that the majority of religious people aren't, and I apologise, Conrad, batshit crazy zealots that make the average Bond villain look reasoned?
What can be done to make people see that, like, religious people
are just normal, I guess.
Yes. I'm here, so on the internet. Yes, I'm trying.
But you're an RPG player, Conrad. People will never can see you as normal.
Yes.
You're an RPGer.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You're one of the cool kids.
Oh my god, man.
I can only encourage, like, it's to sadly, it's not something that we can ask the non-Christian parts of society to do. It's something that rests upon the shoulders of the so-called moderate Christians, like, or liberal Christians, is to be vocal about it, to go out there and at a table admit that you are religious, which is, like, depending on the society where you live, it's actually not that easy. At least in Germany, Christians are a minority. Mm-hmm. I don't know about your situation, but yeah. So it's not really, you are regarded with mistrust if you admit that you are religious. Something still seen as dangerous sometimes.
It's kind of similar here. I mean, the funny thing is if you are, now I'm going to get in some hot water here, but let me say this. If you're Jewish, Muslim, Sikh, anything like this, right, in this country, you say that and you say it openly, and people will be like, oh, cool. If you say that you're, let's say, for instance, at an RPG table, and Jesus Christ, I'm going to get really vilified for what I'm about to say, but if you admit that you're Christian to, say, for example, some RPG players, you get those militant atheists, do you know what I mean? And people just start screeching at you and just say, yeah, but... And it's just like, but why don't you just shut up and just be a nice guy? I don't get why it's not that hard. You know, that's probably not the nicest way of putting that, but the thing is that you'd be nice to all of the other ones, but for some reason it's become very unpopular nowadays to just believe what you believe, and I don't understand why that's the case. I find it particularly unfair, especially when it like you say, the majority of people, as Owen put and as you put, are just normal people. It's not a problem, and as you say, you can enjoy the same things that we enjoy, and it's not like there's nothing wrong with it. Yet for some reason, like you say,
you just have a different belief.
Even just then, when you were talking about it, Conrad, you used the word admit, which is like shouldn't be the word. It should just be say. When you say that you're a Christian,
it's like you're admitting like you're guilty about something.
I know.
It's the same with my family, actually, the Filipino side of my lot. Because they're quite religious. There's a lot of Catholicism in there, but also a lot of Seventh-day Adventists in there as well, which is what I was brought up as. But then one of my cousins, he's a cool dude. We get on well, and like he was the first person who introduced me to like rock music and stuff, which is cool. But him and his brother, they were quite heavily religious back in the day. And my cousin Michael was he was going to go and become a pastor. That was what he was going to do. But somewhere along the line, his belief changed, and same with my one of my other his brother as well, Gibby. Their beliefs it wasn't as strong as it was before, so he decided not to go to the school that he was going to go to and stuff. And sort of fairly recently, because family's huge, so there was unfortunately a death somewhere, and then someone in our family chat said, bless them for they're in heaven now and stuff, which is is a very nice thing to say. And then my cousin comes back and just be like, and he did the annoying thing, which is what you're saying about the militant people. It's just like he said, no, they're not. Like science hasn't proved it. And then it was just like, well, it's just like I interjected, it's like, all right, this ain't the place to be doing this. Like, don't be silly, and we're family. Like, shut up. You can believe what you want. But no one's just don't bite anyone's head off over it, because your beliefs are your beliefs. If you believe them, that is great. But if you know that you're not going to agree with them with some other people, there's no reason to have an argument about it ever.
That was quite serious there for a minute, and that was I completely agree with everything that both of you guys have said. And it's also you're obviously both very intelligent. However, I feel like we need to bring it down to earth with a bit of stupidity for a second, because what I've done is you were talking about how the gods in D&D are statted, right? And so I got Testament down from the shelf.
Yes, right. I saw you open that.
I decided to look
is
to
the Lord
see.
statted?
No, he's not. Thankfully, so he is one of the Christian archetypes that you cannot kill in Testament. So that's good. Second of all. Our listeners, mostly, not yourself, Conrad, but most of our listeners are absolute morons, and we know that. And so Matthew Jones comes in with our final question, and he says, Conrad, what is the best way to convince religious types that God is the great GM in the sky? You don't have to answer that one. But we can have Matthew Jones killed. If you order it, we'll have it done.
We'll smite him.
We'll smite him.
I first want to explain it to him, and then please do. What is the way to convince people through RPGs that don't play Christian RPGs with them? I like that especially feels weird. If you have like divine powers that you can activate, like a wizard, a spell, like a fighter, a fighting stance, like that's not the way. Maybe play RPGs with them, and then when they come to the moment to like say, now I have slain that particular god and I am the god of justice or something, then after the game tell them, I never feel like these D&D gods are like they encompass what the term God really means. I mean, in the fantasy world, yes, they are gods, and in within the fiction they are real. But like if one of them walked among us, I wouldn't feel like praying to them. So don't weigh down your game with something that, like, don't break the fiction over the head of someone's like belief or disbelief.
Very good, man.
Yeah, Matthew, you dummy.
Yeah, never listen again, Matthew. Don't you dare.
Listen.
Don't you? Yeah, but please listen, please. Honestly, we need it. We really do need it. I'm begging you. And also donate on Patreon. Loads of money. Loads. Loads. We'll make a donation to Conrad's church on behalf of Matthew. We're going to donate some of his money for his stupidity and bad behaviour.
Bad behaviour.
Look what you've made us do.
Yeah, you big... Oh, I nearly said a bad word. In front of a minister, Conrad, and that's... No, Matthew, and that's all your fault.
You get names muddled up.
Oh, see how angry I get. It's our damn listeners. They're useless, good for nothing. Anyway, so Conrad, is there anything else you would like to say about religion and RPGs? Anything that you would, anything else you would like to point out between the connection between the two?
Yes, subvert the stereotypes every now and then. Makes it feel more real. Like don't try to send weird real life messages through in-game events. Like if you really have to make that whole monastery like full of pedophiles, then at least do it in a jovial way, I guess. Don't make it too hurtful, and show that you actually know that that's not actually a reality, or if you actually think that it is, then be prepared to argue about it. And to the Christians, our Christian culture in the past has dealt out a lot of hurt and pain in words and deeds. So, like in the spirit of Christ, step back if someone is offensive and cool down and then be nice about it.
Very well said, man.
Well said. Very well said.
So, I have to like an afterthought.
Go on.
There are other religious people that are gaming. My research, I found a website of gaming Muslims and a website on Islam and pop culture.
Awesome.
I think I'll ask you to put it into the show notes.
I absolutely will.
Yeah, and then there's like a gaming ministry, a Christian one, and a gaming podcast. Who's interested? Maybe you'll like it. Like has kind of an evangelical name, Saving the Game, but the people
that's awesome.
Talking.
That's good. Yeah, that is good.
That's good. That's good. You got to have a catchy title.
Yeah,
I like that.
But they are liberal Christians. They don't try to they're not too actively convert you.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Okay.
RPGs or to.
Yeah, just, as soon as they start the podcast up, they're like, hey, these RPGs, they're pretty good. Take it or leave it. I don't care. All right, man. Well, thank you so much for coming on. That was really good. I feel like you've enlightened our listeners, and I hope that in the future they don't send stupid questions in like Matthew Jones did. And I hope that that has showed a new perspective on RPGs from somebody that has hopefully a different perspective on a few of our listeners. But yeah, thank you very much for coming on. It was great to meet you and great to have you on. If any of our listeners have a unique perspective on something, which they probably don't, they're all the same. They're all just homeless drunks. Then please send us a message, and we'd love to have you on as well. But that was fantastic, Conrad. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It was great fun.
Mate, you're welcome back anytime.
Yeah, absolutely.